Welcome to The Facilitator's Edge with Terry C. Brooks. If you're passionate about facilitation, training, and instructional design, you're in the right place. The Facilitator's Edge is your go-to podcast for mastering the art of leading engaging, effective learning experiences. Whether you're a seasoned trainer, an aspiring facilitator, or just curious about how people learn, we'll dive into the strategies, tools, and techniques that set great facilitators apart. We'll explore facilitation best practices, instructional design insights, and even a little personality temperament research, because understanding people is just as important as understanding content. So grab a notebook, keep an open mind, and let's sharpen your facilitator skills together. Ready to level up your impact? Let's get started.
Hello, I am so glad you're joining me again for another episode of my fairly new podcast. It's not really new, I guess. I started it a while ago and life happened and I stopped consulting and began working a real job, and you know how it goes. But I'm glad you're joining me today. I'm actually going to be looking for individuals to interview here. I've discovered I have a pretty robust audience on the podcast, so I would love to interview some subject matter experts on facilitation. And if that's something you would like to do, I invite you to go to terrycbrooks.com and let's talk about some facilitation topics. How about that? I am slightly in a hold right now, but I am hoping to create something of a waiting list. So, and I'll just be fully transparent. I am going through a grieving process, and I'm allowing myself to really process and heal. And as a result, I'm not doing a whole lot right now other than writing and recording. But I am just about ready to bust loose. So I would love to do that with some inaugural interviews. So let me know. And for this topic, I was kind of excited to talk about this because I am one of those people who hates stupid meetings. I have no other way to put it. I hate meetings that waste my time. And I hate the whole concept and culture that some companies have just to meet. Do you know what I mean? Let's have a meeting and meet and talk about it, but there's no structure to the meeting. And you know what can happen? Those can go on for days. Or what feels like days, or they can be just totally unproductive waste of time. And especially for positions where you need to be heads down and you need to be working, to have to stop to meet in this time of technology, you just have to be intentional and you have to know what you're doing. So my latest blog post is my top 10 facilitation techniques. Now, I'm no expert. I don't believe that my master's degree makes me an expert, nor do I believe that my 30 plus years of being a facilitator makes me an expert, nor the fact that I was a $300 an hour consultant for several years and had many return clients. That doesn't make me an expert either. What makes me an expert is the fact that I recognize that I don't know everything, but I'm willing to share what I do know and work my little butt off to learn more. And so that is where I am in saying that these are my top 10 facilitation techniques. So I invite you to take what works for you and forget about what doesn't. And you may find that all of them are not good for you, in which case I'm sorry. And that's where I would love for you to give me a review. I definitely want to hear if it's working, right? But give me a review or go to my website, terrycbrooks.com. And it's actually a blog, so you can comment below and tell me what you'd like to know, or tell me what you think works better, or tell me anything. And now don't hurt my feelings, but, don't call me names, but do let me know, because we learn from each other. And I am what is called a lifelong learner. And I have a growth mindset. And so I want to learn. So, hey, if you know something I don't know, and after almost, I'll just say it, almost 40 years of training, come on and tell me. Let me know. And we can grow together. I'd appreciate it. And by the same token, if you're digging what I'm putting down, please let me know that too. Because I don't know if you've ever been on this side of a content creator, but it is so nerve-wracking because you don't want to waste people's time. and you don't want to tell people things they already know, and you don't want to give bad content. But by the same token, sometimes you never know. I can see that I have thousands of people looking at some of my stuff, but nobody talks to me. And this blog is fairly new attention for me. So it's not at thousands of people yet, but I'm a blogger in other areas. And I'm like, I know you people like this. I have thousands of subscribers, but you don't talk to me. So I want you to feel free to have a conversation with me. If you post a comment and it's something that is relevant, I'm going to reply. Now, if you're trying to get a date, or if you are trying to sell me something, I'm not interested in that. Okay. But if you want to have a conversation about facilitation, hey, I'm your girl. Do it. Let's talk about it. Now, on my facilitation list, I thought it would be hard to come up with 10, and it was not. It was very easy. I actually could have came up with 20. And I said, you know what? People have lives. And so I didn't. So let's talk about them. Okay. The first one that I came up with is such a no-brainer. This one, if you've been in facilitation 5 minutes, you've heard of this one. It is called listening and paraphrasing. Now, I even say if you've been married or in a relationship with somebody, you heard of it. And all this is when you listen, and really it's active listening, but I don't use that anymore because I know with the adult brain that sometimes when we've heard something so many years, we actually can kind of grow to the point where we don't hear it. And so active listening has been around so long, and so many people have been exposed to it that I just call it listening anymore, so that I don't hit that deaf tone to where people just don't hear what it is. But I say just listening with the intent of being fully present when you're facilitating, because here's the thing. I think 90%, and you can tell me if you think this is true on my blog, but I think that 90% of people, myself included, we often think that we know what people are going to say before they say it. That's why a lot of people interrupt folks. That's why we kind of like to keep things moving toward being productive, but sometimes we don't hear people. So it's important that we truly listen when we facilitate. And we got to check for our understanding, because we listen through bias ears, assuming that we know something, or pulling on our past experience, or thinking we know what all managers are thinking, or all supervisors or clients are thinking. And it's normal. Right? And so that's the bias I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, the wicked bias that, some people have. That's a whole other conversation. But there's a bias. We all have our junk. And so when you are listening to your clients and your participants, you have to really make sure that you're discerning body language. You are making sure you understand what they're saying, because sometimes I even can communicate things. I get paid to communicate. And sometimes I can communicate things in a way that didn't fully represent what I was trying to say. Do you know what I mean? It just could have been an off moment, or I just got caught up in, identifiers. I don't know, but it can happen. So you want to make sure that you hear and understand what your participants are saying, so that number one, you can learn if there's something they're not catching, or if they're operating under a faulty system of belief or something. Because sometimes people, meetings and trainings are fast paced, and you can miss things. It's only because we're normal, right? So you can miss things. And so it's good to listen so you can hear if people are really all on the same page. Have you ever been in a meeting and someone said, "Oh, we already covered that," or "We already talked about that"? They were there, but it could have been that they were mentally processing something that had been said just before, or maybe something that they had done in the past, and just missed it. So listen actively, and then repeat back, paraphrasing what they said. And I give a great example in the terrycbrooks.com article. I give a really good example of that. I might add some more actually as I think about it. But I do this with my husband. I do this not as much with my teenager. I need to do this more with my teenager, honestly. But he's a young adult now, so I should say, well, he's still in the teens. So, but I should do this more with him. But it's where you paraphrase, where someone says something and you practice repeating back and saying, well, it seems to me that you're saying blah, or whatever. This one I'm not going to spend a lot of time on because most people should have heard of this. If not, there are tons of active listening resources out there. I actually may list some for you so you can kind of go and track off and, see if you can find some really good stuff out there. Because there's so much out there. Then the second that I introduced was the parking lot method. And I'm excited about that one because I just did a blog post on that. I just did a blog post on ways that you can utilize the parking lot method and some tips and ideas to kind of innovate it because it's been around forever. And if you don't know, the parking lot method is when you get some off-topic conversation pieces and you don't want to derail the group's conversation, so you need to place to park it, right? And so you can park it on a whiteboard or someplace visual where everybody can see it so that if the conversation goes to a place where it's relevant, they can see it and say, oh, look, parking lot. It's on the parking lot already. That kind of thing. This one is an old one, and it's a time and tested one. So make sure you check out the blog post to learn more about that. But it's definitely a best practice. I list in the blog post for the top 10 facilitation techniques that you got to see. You're going to like it. And then I thought open-ended questions, another one that's good for friends, family, whomever, but definitely good for your meeting participants, because people are so comfortable, especially introverts, they're so comfortable replying with yes or no replies, right? For a lot of reasons. Sometimes people don't want to feel as though they're the slow one in the group or the one who is just not getting it, or nobody wants to feel like a stupid person. I mean, I'll just say it bluntly. I mean, when I'm in a group, and especially a work group, I would love to be the most innovative, smart one, but I definitely am not going to be the one that just is not contributing anything. And nobody wants to feel that way. So very often when a question is asked, you have what I call the pregnant pause. It's the pause. It's the where people are quiet. People are trying to decide. Hopefully you've processed them through the flight or fright moment so that they're not scared or nervous or anxious about how they'll appear. But either way, most people are going to quickly reply, if they can, with yes or no. Another reason they might do that is they want to get out of there. They're tired of the meeting. They're tired of you. They're tired of everybody else. But if you ask the open-ended questions, you're going to be able to get more intentional answers. All right. And so these kind of questions will give you something you can pull out further information about. Right? Now, here's the one that you might find controversial. You might not like me with this. And I don't care, but I do care. You may not like this one. I'm being silly. It's the round robin technique. A lot of people who are facilitators and trainers don't like it because what I'm suggesting is that in a meeting or a training, at the very beginning is what I suggest. When you ask a question, or you have an activity, or you have a debrief, have everybody participate in it. Everybody. And warn them up front before they do the activity, or even if it's going to be in a few minutes, say in about 10 minutes, I want everybody to reply to a question I'm going to ask. So pay attention here. Give them warning, so that you can make them feel comfortable. But do know that everybody doesn't like the round robin technique in the meeting or in a training because some people are either checked out. I mean, they're not really paying attention to everything. Their heart's not in it. Other people are introverts, right? So they don't really want to talk to you. They don't want to know what everybody thinks, or maybe they do. They just don't want to talk. And so I say to that, I don't care. I'm sorry. That's my philosophy. Introverts don't come after me. I'm not scared of you. I got my dukes up. No kidding. I hope that I'm not offending anybody, but this is my personality. But here's the thing. Workplaces, training environments should not always be comfortable. Okay? That's what home life is for. That's what friend circles are for. Now, I don't want to make anybody upset, anxious, or mad. I don't want to do that. But my job as a facilitator is to pull from you and to push you gently so that you feel safe in the push. I'm not trying to push you off a cliff, but I'm trying to push you to your optimal performance. And the more facilitators that get that, I think the more productive you're going to be. Okay? So the round robin technique, give them warning, let them know everybody's going to answer, and do this in the beginning. I'd say do it about 3 rounds in the beginning, depending on how long your meeting or your training is. Because after a while, I've done this for 30 plus years. I've seen it every time almost. After a while, you're not going to need the round robin because everybody is used to using their voice. Everybody is used to hearing the other voices in the room. And so they're going to start saying, hey, Beth, what do you think? Hey, Bob, what you feeling? They'll start pulling each other in and into the conversation. So again, it's a little tricky, but you can do it and you can set it up right. And again, I'm not the kind of facilitator that believes everything's going to be giggles and grins and fun all the time. You know what? This is work. So we're going to work. And people were hired there to contribute. So everybody should contribute. I don't care. And I even say, I don't care of their job level. Okay? I learned this at one organization I worked at. They actually included everybody in their planning sessions. They had at least one admin. They had at least one person who did such and such, and even a receptionist might be in there, as well as the managers with us. So as a manager, I remember at first I thought, what they doing here? And not to be pejorative or mean, but I wasn't used to it. But I love that. And so if you have people on different levels, they may feel inhibited, but the round robin will pull everybody out. And I can tell you confidently, some of the best ideas that I have heard in specific projects came from people who had no letters after their name. So I'm putting it out there. Do with it what you wish. Okay. The next thing I thought about, I've learned from safe and agile techniques, which is silent brainstorming. I love this concept as an adult learner and an adult learning facilitator with the educational background in how adults learn. Did I say that enough? But here's the thing. Adults, unlike children, adults benefit from having a moment to kind of think through their thoughts. Think about all the things you think about in one day. Think about it. You think about a lot in one day. And so having that opportunity to just process through your thoughts, to think about your thoughts, to kind of populate your thoughts will be beneficial before sharing with the entire group. Talk about that more at terrycbrooks.com. Check it out. Check it out. And then I give the 1, 2, 4 method. I've used this. This is another one that I think is so beneficial and useful. Now, I'm not going to go through all of them because if I did, what would be the point in you visiting my blog? And I want you to visit terrycbrooks.com with 1 R. I want you to visit it and I want you to run through it and I want you to talk to me about some of the things that stood out, some of the things you don't really like, some of the things you'd add to it. I want you to talk to me, and I want you to do so again so that I can learn from you and that we can learn from one another. And I would love for us to have conversation. I would love it. So I'm going to be watching comments so that you know that your comment doesn't fall into the abyss. Now I'm going to skip to number 10, and you can go see the others. Number 10 is time boxing. This is the best facilitation technique ever because it actually is logical to me because it actually sets boxes of times for particular work. Otherwise, have you ever been in a meeting where you had on the agenda all these things that you were going to do, but because the facilitator maybe dropped the ball, you didn't get to maybe but 2 of them? Now, sometimes that happens just because of the process of the work, all right? But most of the time, I've had it happen because somebody wasn't facilitating, and no one knew how to say, okay, we're going to stick a pin in this and we're going to revisit this offline or in the next meeting, but I'm going to put it at the parking lot for now and we're going to come back to it. Don't worry, but we need to move forward. No one had the cojones to do that. And so sometimes that meant that your meetings went on and on and on, and they weren't as efficient and as effective as they could have been. So I give you some ideas for that too. And you know what? I mentioned in the blog post an organization that I think it was in the 2000s, the early 2000s, maybe. I was only 4. No, I'm kidding. I was younger. And we had an organization called the Interaction Associates come and taught. I think that's the name of it. And anyway, their module was facilitative learning. And I put a link in there to that because I also talk about ways that you can build consensus in a group. If consensus building is necessary, I'd give you some ideas, tried and true ideas of how you can build consensus with your group. So do check out Interaction Associates. I'm going to give them a shout out because that was one of the best trainings I had ever been to at that point. It really was. I really learned so much. And then I'll be honest, they were the coolest people. I think they were from New York. I can't remember. I don't know. But they had the coolest clothes and they were funky and urban. And, they just, and I don't know by urban, but, they just looked funky and cool and had these cool shaped glasses that people in Missouri hadn't seen at that time. And I just liked them. So if anybody ever listens from Interaction Associates, you made an impression years ago on a young professional. So I would love for you to let me know your thoughts again. And I hope that the ones that I did share on this podcast were useful to you. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast and be sure to subscribe at terrycbrooks.com because we're talking all things facilitation. All things. So thank you so much for listening. I hope that during this time I have stimulated some of your creativity and you'll get fresh ideas and build upon things that I've shared. And I definitely hope you have a great facilitating experience this week. Happy facilitating. Bye-bye.
That's a wrap for this episode of The Facilitator's Edge. If you enjoyed today's discussion, Terry would love for you to leave a 4-star rating. It's easy. Just go to the podcast show, scroll down, and tap those stars. Your feedback helps others find the show, and she would truly appreciate it. Comments are always welcome, so drop a review and let her know what topics you'd love to hear next. And don't forget to visit terrycbrooks.com to subscribe for even more facilitation tips and training insights. You can also find her on X, formerly Twitter, at TCB The Trainer. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep facilitating with confidence.